All right, Pete, talk to me a second. I want to check the mic level.
Okay. Uh, Testing one,
Just
two.
tell me something about Alabama football.
Oh, well, I don't know a lot about Alabama football. I know there's Auburn and Alabama. I don't know how much I know about it.
Okay,
But
that's good.
it's
I got you.
got a level.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. So if what we're going to do is just get into this interview is maybe do some little something. You don't have to be too fancy. Just something with a nice little groove to it, and then look up. Well, I came to Muscle Shoals and I was in a band. Blah blah blah. All right.
Okay.
All right. Go ahead. I'm rolling.
Yep. When I came to Muscle Shoals, it was I'd heard about it a lot, as being a recording place. But I came here really with a band called the Hourglass first, and then later I got in the studios in like Miami and Macon, Georgia, and ended up here, because I like studio work. I got tired of bands early.
Okay.
I love to work in studios because one day it'd be Rod Stewart, the next day it'd be Willie Nelson, or the next week. It's just like the different styles. You got to meet different people and play different types of music instead of getting up on stage and playing your same songs every night.
Tell me who was in. Just talk about who was in the band.
The It's called the Hourglass. It was Greg Allman, Dwayne Allman, Paul Hornsby, Johnny Sandlin, and me. I was actually playing bass. I was in California with them, and their bass player quit. They said, "You want to play bass?" I said, "Okay." I never played bass, but I said, "It's got 4 strings. I can do this like the low 4 strings. And Johnny Sandlin, the drummer, we were big fans of like people in Memphis, Stax, and so like Duck Dunn and those guys. And I kind of locked in, just learned how to lock in with the drummer and just that type of thing. When we first came here, I remember walking in the studio and Dwayne had his, it was like loud. And the guys came out and they were showing us how to get a sound on the instruments or a better sound. And
Who were the guys that were showing you how to get a better sound?
There was Jimmy Johnson, Eddie Hinton, Rick Hall, I think, came in and out. That's the main people that I remember as far as when we first came to Muscle Shoals, when I came through Muscle Shoals.
And maybe somehow we'll get to say this. This is the same place. Refer to this as the same room that I worked on so many projects, and talk about some of the projects you worked on here in this studio.
Oh, okay. Yeah, this studio here, I would say 90% of the things that I played on was done right here in the studio. Bob Seger down on Main Street, a lot of the Rod Stewart stuff, Paul Simon, like I said, Willie Nelson, every week.
Did you work on that Cher album?
No, that's before I was here. That was before I moved up here.
Mm-hmm.
I moved up around 70.
And what about the Traffic? Did you work on any of the Traffic stuff that was done in the studio? Did you cut any things in there?
No.
And you want to talk about producing your albums here?
Yeah, well, actually, I produced my albums at different places, different studios around town.
Okay.
My solo albums I did, I would do those at different studios.
And who were some of the players on your albums that were from Muscle Shoals area?
We had like Roger Clark or Roger Hawkins. Harvey Thompson played a lot of sax on some things. Lenny played some LeBlanc played bass on some things. David Hood. I used a lot of different musicians actually.
And your LeBlanc LeBlanc and Carr project, was that done in this studio?
No, the LeBlanc and Carr project was done in another studio.
Okay. Let's talk about possibly the exposure you got here, what it enabled you to do further on in your career, what kind of sessions it took you to.
Oh, well, it's like anything. I mean, when I first moved up here, you got to kind of work your way in. It took a while. Once you play on a record and it's heard on radio and it's a hit, then, you know, it's like anything else. People say, I wanted, you know, the same guy that played on this, you know, like I said, like Main Street, that little thing I do on the front, da 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 da. That kind of got a lot of business for me. I mean, one record led to another, to other artists coming in, and they wanted, you know, they would want me to play because they heard this other record. Just one record built on another.
Right. So,
as far as popularity or whatever.
Let me ask you, was that the case for Guilty when Barry Gibbs was producing? Did he produce that project?
Yeah, that was in Miami.
All right, he asked for you because of why? What was he aware of your ability? Was he just told by another producer that you were a good player, or do you know how that?
I'm not really sure.
Okay.
I just got a call when they wanted me to come down. I did quite a few things in Miami, actually. Even some Bob Seger stuff in L.A. too. Did some Bob Seger things, like a rock album and a few other things. I would work here. Then I worked here exclusively for a lot of years, and I wanted to get into production and spread out, and also play at different studios. So I continued to play here, but I was non-exclusive. Because, you know, I mean, they would want you to just to stay within this one group, and it was a little, you know, I felt it was a little confining after a while, you know, because if somebody called and wanted me to go to L.A., I want to go, you know, if it was something I wanted to do.
Okay, I'm going to change framing for a second. All right, let's talk a little bit about your relationship. We're going to go back now.
Okay.
Just change the frame a little bit. Let's talk about a little bit about your relationship with the guys in the Allman Brothers, you know, and how a little bit more detail about how, you know, everybody's relationship was working at the time.
I first heard of the Allman Brothers. They were actually called the Allman Joys. When I was learning to play guitar in Daytona Beach, that's where they're from and where I'm from too. And I had heard them at a recreation center play, and they were called, that was even before the Allman Joys. But for the first time I seen them, I mean, Greg like blew me away. I mean, his singing was just like killed me. I mean, they were doing like copy songs like every band. I mean, he would get up and do like a Ray Charles. They were doing, or do blues things like Ray Charles, and the next song he'd do something like Bobby Blue Bland, and he would sound like these guys. And I'm going like, my God! I mean, you know, I mean, it would just like blow you away if you close your eyes. You go, this young kid, man, just, you know, sounds like Ray Charles. How's he doing it? You know, and Dwayne, I mean, great. You know, his guitar playing, of course, I would watch him. We became real close friends. Matter of fact, the first time I met Greg, I walked up to him, had my guitar, and they got off break. And I said, "Hey, P. Carr," I said, "Can you show me some guitar licks?" That's the first thing I said to him. I said, "Would you like, you know, here, show me some guitar?" You know, that's just what I was there for. And he said, "That's my brother's Dwayne's department." You know, and I said, "Okay." So you know, he introduced me to Dwayne, and we just kind of hit it off, became friends, you know. So I started hanging out with him. We'd play, and like they invited me to L.A. They came back one time and said, "Look, why don't you come back to L.A. with us?" You know. And so I got on the plane and went back with him, and we lived out there for about a year, I guess. And but I remember a lot of things. We would sit around, we would sit around and sing and play things that were never on an album, like even old country things. You know, it was really cool. We could do just about anything, really. And Greg could sing. I mean, he killed me, you know, and still does, really. Their new DVD I heard is like a really killer. You know, I want to have to check that out. My brother, which is a big fan of theirs too, he was telling me about it. So,
All right, let's pause for a second. Hey Tim, you mind sliding your chair over here a little bit because and okay.
yeah, I think me being, I mean, the people here in the studio are all from this area, and I had, I think, a wider experience of playing with bands, going around different, seeing a lot, like in the California scene, in Florida, and things like that. And I think on guitar playing, a little more, I would say a little more to it as far as arrangement, instead of just pretty much straight blues or rhythm. You know, I brought in more of like doubling things, harmonies, and like building arrangements. I guess that was really, you know, what was my talent, I think, in the studio would be arranging parts. I mean, I was as much as an arranger as I think as a guitar player, but coming up with a part that fits, I guess, like even doing a film, whatever. I mean, it's putting it together. A record is a lot different than people think. You know, they said, well, that's a simple little part, but then they would bring people in that could just really play guitar, but it was like a train wreck. I mean, they would like start playing on a record, and it's like, wait a minute, now that's not the song we're doing. I mean, it just didn't fit the song. What we'd do, we'd, like Bob, I mean, let's say Bob Seger, he'd come in, he'd just play a little of the song. All of them, they'd just sit down with acoustic guitar, piano, and play it to us. I'd sit there and listen, and I said, I think I hear a little thing, we'll try this. You know, sometimes you'd hit something right off, sometimes you had to experiment a little bit, try to come up with a part. But like I said, I mean, coming up with those parts on the guitars and everyone else in the studio, I mean, that's really what the studio was about, arrangement and coming up with a part, to wrap yourself around the artist and the song, you know, and like augment that, what he had or she had. You know, even if it was a little, I mean, it wasn't like I'm gonna do a record, I'm gonna play as much as I can, see, you know, it was like, what would make this record sound good? You know, it wasn't like your ego thing, it was trying to make the song.
Did you ever find yourself in here not being able to please a particular producer?
Oh yeah. I mean, sometimes some things happen, and some things you almost had to beat to make happen, and they still didn't happen. I mean, you know, with an artist and the right song and the right atmosphere, things would fall together, and some days we get out of here and didn't get anything. I mean, it was like beating a horse, you know, dead horse or whatever you want to say. It just wouldn't come together. Oh yeah, I mean, not just pleasing them, pleasing me. I mean, it was like trying to find something because it was actually pretty intense mental work. Because a lot of times you're like, okay, you know, I got to come up with something that fits this song. And sometimes you just weren't inspired, you know, to come up with much. I mean, you know, or something like that. But I mean, as far as coming up with a part or making it, I mean, the song may not have been that great. What are you going to do? You know, you can't do a lot if you don't have a lot to work with, or if it didn't inspire you. And like things that would hear, I like melody, you know, structure and melody in songs. And some songs and the lyrics and the way they sang it I could hear melody. And then I would augment that melody, or take something, even be a counterpart to that the melody of what the song was. It just would fit. Really wouldn't be the melody of the song, but it would like complement the melody. And you know, it would be these little fills, like the intro, or in the middle do a little thing, or just whatever, a line. I mean, it could be it's on guitar, but it could be a string arrangement, like just some simple line, you know, just whatever. Some little thing like that. And when that comes on, I mean, today even people like, that comes on the radio, it's instant. You know, people recognize it instantly. You know, Seeger, matter of fact, I really liked Bob. He was great. We did quite a few things with him, and always really enjoyed working with Bob. He's such a down-to-earth guy and could really sing and wrote some great songs. Enjoyed him. There's a lot of people. That's why I like studio. I mean, I got to meet a lot of people that I really liked, and I loved their artistry. And to work with them, you know, I took it very serious to work with them and try to help. You know, like I said, it didn't matter if it was 2 notes. If it was the right 2 notes, I was happy. You know.
Okay, let's pause for a second. You need a drink or anything? Okay.
Which way you want to talk about?
You left in '79. Let's just
Oh, okay.
see what you were going to say.
Oh, okay. You know, after about 8-10 years of playing and producing here, and then I had some problems with other things, and I left. I moved to Daytona. I said I'm going back to Daytona. I got to get. I mean, I've had enough. 10 years. I'm going back to my hometown, and I came back a few years later, and you know, it was just changed. Well, Barry, a lot of musicians left. I mean, people didn't come here for the sights. I mean, it's a beautiful town, but I mean, for recording, they came because of people. You know, that people played, they heard, and they liked. When people started leaving, and people started getting, like Barry started wanting to produce more and play, and he moved to Nashville. And Barry Beckett was a really big part of this, of our rhythm of the putting records together. He was really good, and I think I added a lot. I think a lot of people, because when I left, I would still get calls to go other places and play with the people, and that I had met here. And I don't know why. I know they built a new studio or moved from this building, a really nice studio down on the river, and they tried to have a record company and things like that, and I guess it just didn't go too well. There's artists, for some reason, a lot of artists quit coming down this way, you know. I think things, you know, go in cycles like that. You know, it's like Memphis was hot one time. You know, everybody would, you know, a lot of things came out of there. Of course, Stax. Matter of fact, Stax in a lot of business here. When I first moved up here, Stax was like a big client. I mean, that was one of the studio's big clients. So they sent all kind of like R&B artists down here. It's like a factory, in and out, in and out. And then one day, we hear Stax folds. And then, actually, I was kind of happy to get into, I mean, I loved R&B stuff like Womack. Bobby Womack was a killer. I mean, I loved meeting him and playing with him and Wilson Pickett and things like that. But, you know, actually, I was like a white kid growing up listening to the radio in Daytona Beach, and like people like Paul Simon and Simon Garfunkel, really at that time, the Beatles and stuff. I mean, matter of fact, I learned about some of these people like the R&B people from the Rolling Stones. I mean, you would think like, okay, it takes a group of guys from Britain to, you know, to let me know I never heard of these people. You know, R&B guys, some of them, you know, the blues people and things like that. I mean, they were, of course, the Stones were like in love with like really deep blues when they first came out. I mean, they would like, talk about like Muddy Waters. They would talk about Howlin' Wolf. They, you know, of course, everybody loved Chuck Berry. You know, the Stones and the Beatles. I mean, Chuck Berry they loved his stuff. And actually, on the first 2 or 3 Stones albums, they had like Little Red Rooster, like things like that. I'm going like, and then a slide guitar. Actually, they were doing slide and blues things. And then I got a little book by them called Our Own Story. And in there, they went through and they talked about all these people that from America. I mean, they loved what was coming out of America. You know, I'm sitting there buying their stuff, like loving what's coming out of England, and I'm going like, wow, you know, I mean, they're like more infatuated with what we do here than, you know. And I really learned a lot from that book. You know, the artists, and Don Covey, Mercy Mercy. all these people, all these R&B artists, like I said, really blues things. Like Little Red Rooster, I'm not even sure who did that, but I know they did it, and it's all over now. I remember like, well, baby, used to stay, you know, that thing all over now. Well, to me, I love that record, and especially with Brian Jones. Well, I didn't know Bobby Womack and the Valentinos did that. I mean, I see a name on there, but actually I knew the Rolling Stones did it, and I liked it. And but that's when matter of fact, when I first met Johnny Sandlin, he didn't like the Rolling Stones at all. You know, I loved them, and I played this all over night. Because, oh man, that sucks, you know. So he played me Bobby Womack's version, and of course it's great, but it's different. I like both of them. They were different, you know. I mean, he just didn't like the Stones version. It's all over now at all. I love it, and I also loved Womack. Matter of fact, Sandlin turned me on to a lot of R&B guys when I moved up here. He played me a lot of records. Matter of fact, he said, "Pete, dig this record called Live at the Regal by B.B. King." I said, "Why don't you go listen to this?" I said, "Okay, cool. You know, I'd love to listen to it." So I sat down with that, and I was learning because he loved B.B. King, you know. And actually, I hadn't heard that much about B.B. King, you know, really. Well, I have, but if I had heard anything, it was either an interview by Eric Clapton or somebody talking about B.B. King. It wasn't people around me in my hometown talking about B.B. King, because maybe, the black people maybe knew him, but I didn't. I was just a white kid, man. You know, the guys I hung out with, well, I didn't really hang out with them, but I mean, what I seen in school was these guys going to beach surfing and things like that. Matter of fact, Greg and Dwayne, man, we used to be really into surfing. I mean, like, I think Greg, you know, for a while, but I mean, that's when he was really young. But once I got into music,